Hey fellow luthiers, welcome back to DIY guitar making. In this episode, I am going to be carving and voicing this lovely parlor guitar top here, and ultimately my goal by the end of the day, I don't think this is all going to make it on this video. I'll stop recording at some point just so I can get things done real quick, but my goal is to get to this point right here. So I'm working these two parlor guitars at the same time. This one is a bit further ahead than this, and so I just need to catch this up. But while I'm doing all this carving, what I want to do is give you guys a whole bunch of tips on brace carving. Okay, your first tip is this. I know a lot of you guys just place your soundboard right on your workbench on a nice padded surface and you just start carving away like that. But it's very easy, especially if you have a fairly significant radius on your top. Some people use flatter radii and some people have more of a doming. This is a 30-foot radius, so for a top, that's a pretty significant radius. And if I'm carving this on the flat workbench, and I've actually done this before, this is how you learn these things, it's very easy to crack the top or even separate a brace off of the top or something like that, because the soundboard isn't flat and your work surface is flat. So if while you're carving you just kind of lean your elbow on one area or another, you can hear that god-awful shotgun sound when the wood splits on you. So you have a radius dish, right? You should have a radius dish if you radius the braces and glued them up. So you might as well use it at this step. Carve your braces in the radius dish. And I have these corkboard sheets that I made so that I can place them over the grit. It's very thin cork. You can find at arts and crafts stores. You can find these rolls of adhesive backed cork, and I just stuck it down to this very thin plastic, acrylic perhaps, material here. Okay? So any way that you can make some sort of blanket to put over the grit of your radius dish, because you don't want to carve right over that grit. It's actually not so much that I'd worry about getting grit scratches on the soundboard, because the soundboard's not going to be moving around. More so you want to stay away from doing that simply for the sake of your chisels, right? It's only a matter of time, if you have all that exposed grit, that your chisel is going to, you're going to either place it on the soundboard, I'm sorry, on the radius dish, place it on the radius dish accidentally, or you're going to strike it accidentally. So now I have a radius dish that's mounted to a shop stand over here. Obviously you don't have to do this, and a lot of you guys aren't going to have the space or really even the interest to do such a thing, but I'll show you it anyway. So I have a StewMac shop stand, and I've kind of rigged up my radius dish so that I can mount it onto the shop stand. And this just creates a nice little table that I can sit at and really get cozy around. Okay, but that's I don't know, a bit more involved and advanced. And again, not everyone's going to do that. But at the very least, carve your braces in your radius dish, even if you do that over at the workbench. All right, next tip is sharpen your freaking chisels. I know a lot of you guys out there do sharpen your chisels very well, but this tip is really for beginners. A lot of people starting out don't even know what a sharp chisel is. One thing you can do is go to another woodworker, find a wood shop in your area, and honestly just pick up a sharp chisel and use a chisel that somebody else has sharpened, just to experience what sharp actually is. So what's the best sharpening system? Honestly, the best sharpening system is the sharpening system that you will actually do. So what I mean by that is there are a lot of fancy sharpening systems out there, and this is one of those fancy systems. It's called the WorkSharp 3000. They did not sponsor this video or anything. I don't get paid to say this. But I don't do affiliate marketing or anything like that for products. But I'm just telling you about it because this is the solution that I have been drawn to, simply because It's very accessible. It's always plugged in and sitting right here. And so anytime I want to sharpen a chisel that has gotten a little bit dull or gotten a nick in it where honing is no longer keeping it sharp, it actually needs to go back to either the sharpening stone or to this. Well, this is what I go to, just because anything else with, oil stones or water stones or something like that requires me to get oil and water and different things and pull it all together, and it's kind of messy. Whereas this, it's, again, like I said, it's always there. It's convenient, so that means that I'm actually going to use it. It's a crazy world out there of different sharpening techniques, and it's kind of bewildering, and it really turns you off to sharpening, I think, when you're getting started in woodworking. So my best advice is honestly to just pick something, one thing, and stick with that. Learn it good. And if you can, pick something, once again, that isn't so complicated of a process, because the less complicated it is, the more likely that you're going to do it when it's needed and not put it off and just kind of, slough off the idea that you need to sharpen this. Just keep, pushing through with a dull chisel. That's never good. So yeah, keep your chisels sharp, folks. Speaking of sharpening, let's talk about honing now a little bit. Many of you guys might not even know, if you're beginners, that there's a difference between honing and sharpening. So as you use a chisel, what's happening is that very razor sharp, what's called a zero edge, the absolute point of the chisel, the metal is very, very thin there. It actually reaches a point of zero at some point. And at that tip, what's happening as you're working the chisel, you're getting a little burr of metal that's curling off the end of that tip. That burr will make it seem like your chisel isn't as sharp as it was before. But the reason it's not cutting well is not because it's not as sharp as it was before, it's because of that burr. And all you have to do is remove the burr. You don't actually have to return to whatever your sharpening system is. And so that's where a leather strop comes into handy. So all this is a piece of leather that's fastened to a block. Now this is a commercial product that you can buy, but that I'm telling you just what it is, so you could even just find the materials. If you have a piece of leather and something to stick it to, you've got a leather strop. In addition to that, you need some compound. It's not hard to find. Look up compounds that you would use for honing or for a leather strop, and you will find a product like this. I have literally only ever rubbed this compound onto the strop once, and I think that's all you ever need to do. Perhaps maybe in 10 years or something, this compound will have worn off, but basically it gets worked into the leather and you never have to use it again. So as I carve, and here I'll just take a couple swipes off of this. I wouldn't do it this frequently, but I might do it after every brace end. That's actually a pretty good flow to get into. Or otherwise, just when you feel like you need it, right? You're just going to keep this at your side. Again, convenience means you'll actually use it, so keep it nearby. And place the flat side of the chisel down and draw it back. And then flip it over and hold it a little bit more carefully this way, because on the flat side it's easy because you have a nice flat surface to reference and to keep it flat. Here you have to actually balance it on the bevel. Now, this is more forgiving than if you had sloppy technique with sharpening. With the leather strop, you don't have to be perfectly on that. You're not going to dull your edge if you happen to swivel off of that just a little bit. But it's best to try and keep it right on that bevel as you draw it straight back, okay? And not to flick it back. That's not the idea. You're not curling. You're maintaining that bevel angle, okay? So that's a strop, but here's a cool tip. I don't know if this is a tip within the tip or a whole new tip, but a ready-to-go strop that you always have with you. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to add honing compound. You don't have to do anything. Is the meaty part of your thumb. So this does not work as well as the leather strop, so I still use this and recommend it. But sometimes in a pinch, if I just don't have that at my side, I will just take the back edge of the chisel and just go like that. And then take the other side and go like that. Okay? I would say this works about 50% as well as the leather strop. I notice a difference. I notice that doing that has deburred the edge mostly. I can tell it's cutting better again when I do that. So again, meaty, this part of your thumb is a great area to use. And all that's doing is knocking those burrs off the edge to reclaim that zero edge. The next tip is to make yourself a story stick. If you plan on making more than just one guitar of the same model, it makes sense not to have to reference numbers off of a sheet or have to reference, let's see, I've got some commercial sets of plans here. Not to have to reference your plans in order to mark out, see on this set they have all these different tapers, right, where the taper begins. All of those measurements, it's lots of little measurements, and you will save yourself a lot of time and thus enjoy the process much more if you just take the time at the outset on the first guitar that you build. Take the time to make yourself a story stick. So here's what a story stick is. A story stick has all of your measurements on one ruler, right? It tells the story of whatever project you're building, in this case a bracing pattern. So when I make this, I always use, depending on how complicated the bracing pattern is, I will use different colored pens and markers so that the various different braces are easy to find and there's no confusion, right? Because you can see I've got, here's the center of my X brace, so I line that up right there. And I can clearly see the two ends that I'm marking because they are both also in that gold color, and they're also very clearly marked. Lower X, center X, upper X. You can see how if I use the same colored pencil it would get confusing here because I have these other marks that are kind of in between these ones for the transverse bar, okay? But those are in black, so it's not confusing. So to show you how this works, I would just take this, make my marks there, and then I would do that other brace, and then when I wanted to do the transverse bar, I would just come up, line that up on center, and there's my transverse bar, and on and on. In addition to the story stick, I also have a tiny piece of acrylic here that I've carefully thicknessed to the exact thickness that I like to use for the depth of all of the braces that get tucked into the structure of the sides. So your X-brace arms and the transverse bar. Those all get carved down to a predetermined depth. In my case here, that's 0.115 inches. And they get tucked into the notches of the sides. So a part of my marking out process is just taking this little depth template here and just marking these out. Alright, let's do some actual carving now. Right off the bat, I just want to mention, you may have noticed that my chisel looks a little wonky here. That's because this is a Two Cherries guitar brace chisel. And you can absolutely use a normal chisel for this type of work. But I just like these guitar brace chisels. That curve just makes the feel of the work a little bit, the flow of it a little bit easier, and so it actually goes a little bit quicker. But again, you can use a normal chisel for this, okay? I just wanted to explain that because otherwise I know someone would bring that up in the comments. All right, so First of all, when you're using a chisel, 2 hands on the chisel at all times. That's a very important tip because if you're just using one hand, well, hey, what's that other hand doing? It's probably bracing this or something like that. If you feel the need to have to hold or brace the workpiece in an awkward way, then something else is wrong, okay? Probably with your setup there. So stop, take a breath, and figure that out. Don't do something stupid. So 2 hands on the chisel. All right, next tip. Most of you guys are probably using the chisel sort of like this right here, and that's fine. That cuts really well. But you can improve the cut just a little bit by skewing the angle of the chisel. Not the angle in up and down like this, but skewing it like this and carving that way. Now the reason that cuts better is simply because if I'm coming straight on like this, then the wood is presented with the full angle of the bevel, which in order for the metal to be strong enough so that it doesn't just fold over under the work and the pressure that we're subjecting it to, in order for that metal to be strong enough, it has to be a pretty steep angle. It can't be a very acute angle. So we're forcing a steep angle through the wood, which makes the cut a little bit harder. However, what we can do is if we turn the chisel like this, what happens is we actually change that angle. If you think about it this way, I always like to think of it as like I like to hike a lot, so it's a good hiking analogy, is it's very hard to hike straight up a steep hill if you've ever tried that. If you look at trails in, say, national parks, you will see that there are always switchbacks going up because it's much easier to attack the hill at an angle because the grade is less. And it's actually the same exact concept here. If I'm pushing this straight like that, then the wood is essentially going straight up that mountain, no switchbacks. If I turn it like this, the wood is moving at an angle, basically like a switchback, up the bevel of the chisel. So we haven't actually changed anything physically about the chisel itself, so the material and the edge of the chisel is just as strong. It's not going to fold over or break, but we have effectively changed the angle. It's pretty cool. So yeah, all you have to do is skew the chisel just like that. You can use bevel side up or bevel side down, and I use both depending on what I'm doing at the moment. So you might see me switching from going flat side like I am over here. And then as I get to the point where I need to start scooping this out, I will go bevel side down. All right. That's good. This one is voiced. All right, guys. So those are my tips. I'm gonna keep plugging away at this and see if I can get this done before I close up the shop today. So with that said, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now. If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.